Hi friends, it's Shari. Today I have a really fun Valentine project to share with you using the heart pouch die. So I'm pulling out my heart pouch die, and to create the heart pouch you need to cut two of these. I have some pieces of the fruit salad 12 by 12 paper here. I'm using 5 different colors. And each of these pieces I've cut to 6 inches by 8 inches, which is a perfect size to cut two of these hearts from and get the most from your piece of paper. I will be using the gingham as a good way to line up the heart and make sure that it's nice and straight with that gingham pattern. I'm starting out by lining up my die in the top right corner, and then I'll hold it in place with a little bit of removable tape, and then I'll run this through my die cut machine. So I have one piece, this is one side. Then I'm going to take this and flip it around and line this up in the corner again. So you can see I have two of those die cuts that are going to kind of nest together, and I can get two of those heart pouches from one piece of cardstock that is 6 by 8. I'm just shifting this around to get that plaid kind of looking centered on that front of the heart, and then I'll continue on and do the same with all of the colors so that I have enough pieces to create 5 different pouches. So I have all of my hearts cut here in all those colors, and I'm just going to set those aside for a little while, and then we're going to work on coloring our images. So for my images today, I'm using a lot of different stamp sets. I'll be using Milk and Cookies that you see there on the bottom. I'll be using Let's Toast, Sweet Friends, Love You a Latte, Critters on the Farm, and a waffle lot. I know Critters on the Farm seems pretty silly, but you'll see here in a little while why I have Critters on the Farm. I'm inking up all of my images with some Lawn Fawn jet black ink onto some white cardstock because I will be doing some Copic coloring of my images. So I'm starting out coloring my cookies. I have 2 shades of brown, coloring that darker color around the outside edge where we have that crispy edge of the cookie, and then I'll pull it in with the lighter color towards that soft center. I don't know about you, but I like a chewy cookie. So this is the best part if you ask me. Next, I'm moving on to my toast, and I do want this to look like toast, so I've picked some browner colors than I would if I just wanted it to look like bread, which you will see here in just a little bit that I color another piece to be just untoasted bread. So I started with that medium tone. I traced around the inside of the crust, and then I blended out with the lighter. I can always go back and add a little bit more of that medium tone color right here and blend out the edge. And once I have that looking the way I want, I will pick up that darker color and just outline that crust around this piece of toast. I think that looks pretty toasty. I'm just adding a little bit more darkness just to those kind of corners and crevices. Now I'm moving on to my waffle, and I'm using this darker shade to just draw in 2 sides of the waffle parts of my waffles. So I gave a little bit of shadow like a V at the bottom of those little squares. Then I'm filling them in with this lighter color. And then I am going to take an even darker color and trace around that waffle shape. So all that crisscross through the middle and around that outside edge. I'm being pretty loose with that. I do have a little bit of white left, but I'm going over the whole thing again with my lighter color. So I'll do the same thing to the other waffle again, drawing a little V shape in those little squares inside the waffle. Then I will color each of those little squares in with my lightest shade. Then I'm going to trace around the outside of the waffle and those inside parts with the darker color, making that little crisscross shape. And then I will go over the whole thing with the lighter color again, which blends it all together nicely and fills in any white spaces I may have left. For the coffee cup, I went ahead and colored the cup in a cream kind of color, but I wasn't quite sure what color I wanted the sleeve to be, so I'm just leaving that for right now and moving on to my donut. So I wanted this to have some bright pink icing, so it's very colorful. And I'm tracing around the outside and inside of the icing with a darker shade, and then I will blend out with a lighter shade. And I felt like that was a little too light, so I'm going back in with a darker one to kind of darken up the edges a little bit, make it look a little more pinky. I will be adding some stamped sprinkles to this a little bit later. And then I didn't want my donut to be too dark, so I'm using a lighter brown here. I believe this is the one I used for the light color of the toast. Now moving on to my avocado. I have 2 shades of green. Again, I'm tracing the inside edge and around the pit, and then I'm blending out with a lighter. I've pulled in a dark green to outline the skin of the avocado, and it really kind of frames up those green colors. Of course, I've got a brown for the pit, and I'm using 2 shades. I have a darker one to add some shadow along the bottom and a lighter one to fill in the rest. Now back to my coffee cup. I still wasn't quite sure what color I wanted the sleeve to be, but I went ahead and colored the lid in some grays, starting with the darker color to kind of give that rounded look and then blending out with the lighter. For my chicken, I did something a little bit different. I traced with a cool gray, and then I'm going to fill in with a very pale brown. So this is more like a cream color. It kind of just gives this chicken a little bit of a different kind of color to add that cool gray in with that cream color. And then of course I need to color the comb on its head and then the beak with some orange. And then finally I decided, let's make this a purple sleeve. It is going to go with the donut, so that purple and that pink will go really nicely together. I just didn't want it to look like one of those cardboard sleeves. I wanted it to have a little bit of color. Now if you noticed, I left out my milk carton coloring. I didn't like the way it ended up because I wanted the darker color on the bottom. So I stamped another one and I'm coloring this in with some blues on the bottom. And then I'll color the top with some cream colors. Finally, I realized I had 5 hearts cut and I had not thought of a 5th pairing for my little hearts. So I have gone back to my Let's Toast stamp set, stamped out a piece of toast, the butter, and the knife, and the little pat of butter, and I'm just coloring those as well. I am doing a different color for my piece of bread because I don't want it to look like toast, because this pairing is bread and butter, not avocado and toast. So I'm using a lighter color for my crust and an even lighter color for the inside of the bread. And you'll see here, I will grab my toast that I colored earlier and pull it down beside there to make sure that they look a little bit different. Now that I have all of my images colored and cut out with the coordinating dies, I've paired them up on the heart in which I think they look best on. I've also cut out some sentiment banners from some colored cardstock, and I'll be stamping the sentiment from the Milk and Cookies stamp set that says "We Belong Together." I'll be stamping this on all of them, so this part will be the same for all 5 hearts. I'm stamping it towards the left side on all of these. And then I'll use my die that I used to cut out my sentiment banner to shorten this up and cut off the other end so that my banner is a little bit shorter and fits my sentiment perfectly. So I just line this up, making sure it kind of snaps into place on the top and bottom of the piece that I've already cut. And then I tape this down on the end. I'll run this through my die cut machine and it's just going to cut off that extra tail on the end and give me a shorter sentiment banner for my project. So I've done that to all 5. I'm also using some scrap guava cardstock and the 3 different sizes of hearts from the Hearts and Stars skinny tag die to cut out some guava hearts that I can use on my heart pouches to decorate. So I'm just going to show the assembly of one heart pouch. All of these are obviously assembled the same and folded the same. I'm folding on the score lines that the die creates all the way around the heart and the side. Then for these pieces, I'm going to fold them in the other direction, so towards me rather than away. And that's because they're going to fold in on the top to create our little enclosure of the heart pouch. I'm doing the same thing to the other green piece here, folding on all of those score lines. And then for these pieces, I'll fold towards me, making a valley fold. Now it's time to decorate all my little hearts. So I'm going to fold this under just so I can see my heart a little better. It turned out I didn't really need to do this as I kind of went along, but this was good to kind of visualize where everything goes. For the sentiment banner, I'm putting a little bit of liquid glue right in the center. Then I'll line this up towards the bottom, and I'm making sure it's straight by using my grid mat as a guide. I do like that I can kind of shift it around. You see me kind of wiggling it around with that liquid glue. Now that my sort of base for everything is on there, I don't really need to have my heart folded under. I did go ahead and add smiley faces to all of these little images. Now, I could have done this at the beginning. I just kind of forgot. I wanted to get on with my coloring and add my smiles after the fact. So these smiles come from the Let's Toast set, which is where these images are from. I will also add some little rosy cheeks just to my toast, which I think is really cute. And then I'm putting some foam squares on the back of these. I'm using thin foam squares. And I'll just pop these onto the front of my heart. So there's my little avocado and toast pair. Now I'm going to go ahead and assemble this heart pouch. You want to take some double-sided tape and put it on these tabs that go along the side and the end. Now I did the end tab on both of these because I forgot that to assemble our heart, we're going to cut one of these off. So you are going to see me cut one of those off here in just a minute. This is how it assembles together, and this is why we need to trim one off, because we don't want to layer both of those together. So I'll pull off that liner tape for the little one and line up this edge. Then I can pull off the liner tape for this long edge and fold these up together to start to create my heart pouch. And you see there how it takes shape. Those two top pieces will fold in and we will tie it, but we'll do that here in just a little bit. I am going to add my little guava hearts that I cut earlier, and I'm just sprinkling these around. I'm going to use one of each size for each of these hearts. I'll just add a little dot of glue and then drop those into place. Now I'm moving on to the next one in my series of Valentine couples. This is coffee and donuts. So I've taken out the Sweet Friends stamp set and I'm using some of the little smiley faces from this set to add a smile to my donut as well as my coffee. There are stamps in here to add sprinkles, and that's what I'm doing for this, using that guava ink, just adding some pink sprinkles to my pink donut, and then I've added that thin foam square and adding that to the front of my heart. Now for this one, the guava hearts didn't really show up because my pattern paper is also pink, so I cut some white sparkle pixie dust cardstock for those hearts. Moving on to milk and cookies, another perfect pair. This was kind of the theme of our wedding, milk and cookies for Matt and Shari, which I just think is so cute. I've stamped a smiley face on the whole cookie. I've stamped the chocolate chips on the cookie with the bite, and then I stamped a smiley face on the milk carton. Adding those foam squares, I'm going to pop up the whole cookie and the milk. And then I'll use the cookie with the bite. I'll just glue this right down to the background, tucked behind the other two. Then of course I'm adding those little hearts to kind of fill that in and give it a little more pop of color. It really stands out on that yellow gingham heart. Now on to my fourth pair. This is the bread and butter that I added kind of later. So I'm adding my smiley faces to my bread and my stick of butter. There are some really small faces in the Let's Toast stamp set that fit onto the stick of butter, and then there's a really tiny one that fits on the pat of butter, and I'm going to stamp a smiley face on there as well. For my piece of bread, I am going to add some little rosy cheeks with the Peachy Keen ink, and then I can assemble all these onto my heart pouch. So I've started with my piece of bread with some foam. I'll add some thin foam to the butter as well and put this right to the right. And that little pat of butter, I thought it would be cute to kind of overlap him like he's on the bread. And then this knife, I wasn't quite sure where to put it, but I stamped it so I could fill this in a little bit more because I knew these images were small. So I'm just going to tuck it behind the bread. It kind of looks like the bread is cutting the butter, which is kind of funny actually. I'm adding those little guava hearts to this one, and then I'm moving on to the fifth and final pairing, which is my favorite, chicken and waffles. Not that it's necessarily my favorite to eat, but it is the one that makes me laugh the most of all of these pairings that I came up with. So I'm adding my chicken and my waffles. No need to stamp any smiley faces on these because those waffles are pretty busy with their waffle design, and I thought it would be funny to add this one with a bite taken out to where it looks like the chicken has been eating it. I just think that's really cute. And then of course I have my little hearts to add to this one as well. Now I'm not going to show you the assembly of all of these because they're all exactly the same as the green one. So I have them all assembled and I'm ready to tie them up with some twine. I did pick out different colors of twine for every one that matches the heart and the images that I have on there. I'm just threading the twine through the holes once you line them up, tying it in kind of a knot, and then I'll tie a bow. It's hard to tie the bow without tying that knot first, just like tying your shoes. Once I have this bow looking the way I like it, I'll just trim off the ends of the twine so that they're not quite so long. It's a lot easier to start with long twine than to try and tie a bow if it's too short. And then I realized I didn't add any glitter. So I'm adding my stickles to the pink hearts. I don't need to add it to the white ones. And then here are my finished Valentines. So we have coffee and donuts, avocado and toast, bread and butter. So cute. Milk and cookies. And then my favorite, chicken and waffles, which is just so cute. So here is a final look at my little treats. These would be really cute on any kind of treat container, and I think it's really fun to come up with these fun combinations. Maybe you can even come up with some more that I didn't share today. Thanks so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.